Really. So what is the significance of returning the bodies of our liberation heroes back home? Well, let's bring in the spokesperson for the Ministry of Defense and Military Veterans, Onicca Kwakwa. Good morning to you, Onicca. Thank you so much for joining us. An interesting conversation also that we're having this Heritage Month, right? About bringing our heroes back home. But the numbers are really quite astronomical when you think about just how many South Africans' remains are in other countries, right? We're bringing 49 back. But just how many of our struggle heroes are still buried in other countries?
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers. Yes, indeed, we are bringing home 49, and was a launch, if you remember, 3 weeks back. Minister of DSEC and Minister of Military Veterans launched the Repatriation project. And this project is going to kickstart with exactly what is happening today. And we're going to see many more repatriations happening in the next 3 years. And the process of tracing is happening through the NPA. And we'll continue to bring the remains of the heroes and heroines who died fighting for our liberation.
Yeah, I believe that it is at this point over 1,000 of our heroes that are really still buried in other African countries like Zambia, Zimbabwe, some even in Tanzania, for instance, Morogoro, Mazimbu there, where many exilees would still be. Talk to me about the challenge of being able to bring them back and why it has taken and continues to take so long, particularly where you go into areas like Morogoro, where, for instance, you might very well see graves belonging to South Africans, but unmarked. So how do you go about tracing and tracking, particularly where graves do not have headstones or names?
Yes, indeed, you're right. The process took long because in the beginning, it was just done on an ad hoc basis. Families would be requesting, you know, that we had Batman, Nakase, Mokotani, and many other leaders, a few, if I may say. But now, because there was a policy that was put in place of repatriation in 2021, and the interministerial committee that was set and chaired by the deputy president, it kind of gave this project an impetus to say we move fast, because it does not only need DSEC or SARA or DMV, it needs a whole lot of departments to come on board, NPA, through their, tracing missing persons task team, Home Affairs, Health, and so forth. So now that we are being led and being coordinated centrally, that's now when you will start to see this project moving with the necessary speed. But of course, there are other countries that also did not really understand, because in terms of international laws, people must be buried where they die. So it was also, a very kind of a long process for conversation happening with the countries. So the model that was adopted by Cabinet in 2003, it was a model of a country to country, and that is kind of making it a bit easier. That's why you see now, this morning as we are speaking, guests are getting ready both in Zimbabwe and Zambia, and this is led by government to officially hand over the remains that will ultimately arrive later this afternoon.
There's also, I'm thinking about the sort of collaboration that's necessary between countries, and something to be said about the role of countries like Zimbabwe and Zambia in I suppose, preserving those remains and being part of understanding that this is very much South African heritage. So talk to us about the role that has been played over the decades by countries like Zimbabwe and Zambia post our liberation.
Indeed, the countries have housed our heroes. We knew some of them where to go find them. Maybe some of the families would even go there. And when this process started, as I said, that it was a very long, tedious process, but ultimately there was an understanding. And even the countries, especially Zimbabwe and Zambia now, because those are the two countries that we're working with, the issue of memorialization, it had already started to happen in their countries, and we're also agreeing that it will continue even when the heroes come home. So it has been, because we've got, we've fought side by side with these countries, to fight for the liberation of our country, but also the colonization of the continent. It has been very easy to work country to country, but also party to party. So now that the doors have been opened, there's an understanding it is really going to be a smooth flow.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that we're talking about freedom fighters and struggle heroes that belong to various political parties, right? The ANC, the PAC, the Black Consciousness Movement. And when you look at those numbers, over 1,000, it speaks to how many people contributed to where we are now as a country. Talk to me about what we know around the conditions that would have led to their death in some instances. I know that none of them all are going to be the same as the other, but it does give us an opportunity to look at how they were living, and that not all of their lives are lost during battle, right? But difficult conditions that they were living in some cases, correct?
Yes, you're correct. I mean, mainly it was operations. If you look at the late 1960s, the Onicca Kwakwa campaign in Zimbabwe, it was mainly, comrades who would leave the country, like the military detachment, going out, for various operations. Some, as we had Mam Catherine Zigalala, who said that, they went to assist on issues of health. Some went there to mainly, help to organize in terms of the logistics of those heroes and heroines who went to exile. So many of these comrades, especially the 49 of them, if you check their profile, you realize that they went for many reasons, but mainly it was for operations, it was for fighting for the liberation of South Africa and her people.
Yeah, and living in tough conditions. I know that many of our freedom fighters losing their lives due to, things like malaria, for instance. Really, really interesting and quite eye-opening. Okay, well, talk to us about what the program looks like for the next few days, and certainly, all the commemorations that will be then taking place.
Yes, indeed. It is a historic day today, really, as South Africans. I hope we understand what this day means. So we are going to start at the Waterkloof. Like I said, as we're talking this morning, delegation led by deputy ministers in the two countries will be attending ceremonies both in Zimbabwe and Zambia. And this will be the ceremonial, handover of the remains by the two countries. And then we will be waiting for them, led by the minister, Mam Nchimtsecha. Here at Waterkloof, there will be a ceremonial, program. Today, we're not going to have much of speeches. It's just going to be government interacting with the families and, receiving the remains, and they will be then taken to the One Mill Hospital. And then on Friday, they will be brought to Freedom Park. The event will be presided over by President Ramaphosa and many other of distinguished leaders, and the important guests will be families. And from there, after Friday, there's going to be a long process, probably about 3 months, of doing what needs to be done in terms of forensic and the finalization. Then the bodies will be handed over to families and provinces will be hosting events and memorial lectures, and then the reburial.
Yeah, a really incredible moment for us to reflect on those who laid down their lives for our very own freedom. So far away from home. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Onicca Kwakwa, the Ministry of Defence and Military Veterans spokesperson.